All right, let's go. So welcome everyone to tonight's Innovate and Advance session. We have a title for today's session is Patterns, Pivots, and Purpose, The Road to Charlee.ai. I'm so excited to host this session alongside Uvika, and we are thrilled to have you join us for this powerful conversation about innovation, resilience, and responsible AI. Here's how the evening will flow. Yuvika will introduce our speaker, followed by an engaging presentation from our guest. After that, we'll open the floor for Q&A. So please drop your questions in the chat. And a gentle reminder to stay on mute during the session, especially me with this thing going on, unless you're speaking during the Q&A. With that said, I'll hand it over to Yuvika to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Padmini. So we are honored to introduce our guest tonight, Sri Ramaswamy. She is the founder and CEO of Charlee.ai, the insurance industry's first NLP-based predictive analytics platform. Sri brings over 22 years of deep expertise in advanced analytics and artificial intelligence. She is the visionary behind Charlee.ai, proprietary patented claims language model, a game-changing innovation that adds meaningful context to predictions, surfaces critical insights, and drives smarter workflows in the complex world of insurance claims. As a certified associate in risk management, Sri combines technical excellence with industry acumen. Her work empowers insurers to harness unstructured data, documents, third-party sources, and even social media to reduce claim costs, improve reserve management, and elevate risk selection. Beyond her role as a tech leader and problem solver, Sri is also a passionate mentor in the insurtech community and a sought-after speaker in operationalizing unstructured data. When she's not building the future of insurance, you'll find her stargazing, hiking, or practicing yoga, or sipping tea. We have caught Sri several times sipping tea in different parts, whether in the US or in India, and we absolutely enjoy those posts. With that, super excited to have you here, and the floor is yours, Sri.
Gosh, I think you all heard the glorious part of the introduction. Well, let's get into not so glorified parts of the entrepreneurship world, especially when you are dealing with a regulated industry like insurance and a lot of different unknowns that AI brings in this world. So, like I think both of you guys said, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having this group. When I started on this journey, it just felt completely lonely. Nobody, nobody to even tell you the meaning of AI. Nobody even told me what is NLP until after we figured out, and patented it. So there's a lot of things that I had to learn, and I think this journey has been ups and downs like any other entrepreneurship journey. More so because the technology was new, and insurance industry is very regulated and also very risk averse. Although they are in the business of indemnifying risks. So with that, I just have a few slides. I'm not going to bore you with slides. My attention span on slides is very less, so I understand your pain, but I just ask you to follow through with me. Stop me if you have any questions, or put it in the chat, as people said. Love to have the floor given to you guys for any questions that I can answer. So with that, I'm actually going to share my screen here. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see.
Oh, I think I came to the last one. That's not what I wanted to have. All right. So the lot of questions on people's minds with AI. And when we entered this world of insurance, a lot of questions. As you can imagine, where people did not even know the meaning of analytics, let alone the meaning of AI. So we were called Infinalytics before, infinite analytics. That's because I myself didn't know that this was AI. when I started this journey. So with that, this one is going to be walking through the AI journey, building of Charlie, what went into it. A lot of people think technology, technology, of course, all the different AI, fancy, sexy techniques that goes into AI. But apart from that, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of sweat, and there is a lot of empathy, and there is a lot of wanting to change the world as well, like any other leader would want that. I'm going to start with this. Everybody talks about AI replicating human brains. What I wanted to bring to the table was the pituitary gland of AI, which is what are the core functions within our body that the brain cannot do. It's only the lungs, liver, heart, and all those things. So that is kind of what I wanted to bring into the world of AI, combining human intelligence and artificial intelligence. A lot of things went into my journey. I've kind of split into three areas: patterns, pivots, and purpose. And you'll see the reasons why. And I hope this is more than an inspiration. There's also sets a path for a lot of you who are on that journey, who think that you are working right now, but along this, it might inspire you to come up with your own ideas and start companies and become successful along the way. I'll go back in my journey. So let me talk about the 22 years that Uvika just talked about, in the introductions. I started my journey with my undergrad in hotel management and never knew even the spelling of computers. Never even knew what happens in that world. I was wanting to become a Bollywood dancer. And I did a lot of shows, a lot of Bollywood dancing, loved to do that on the stage. If you really want to see the real Sri, it's on the stage dancing. And I, at that time, don't care who's around, who's not around, dance to the music. That's who I am. That's how it started. But very quickly, my dreams were crushed. I worked in the hotel industry for a couple of years and then moved on to going to Samsung and changing my career a little bit at that time and moving into sales roles. And then from there, went to do my master's in Australia in the IT and data. We'll talk about why I did all those changes there and what caused those pivots. And none of this was planned. It was all take it as it comes and just make the best out of what you have, what life gives you. And that's really how it all folded. So went on to do my master's and did stand first in database administration in the college, and then got married. I worked in Australia for a few years in the banking industry, came here to the US after I got married, started again, continued my banking journey and then moved to insurance. That's the 22 years. And why patterns? And why has that been very critical in my life? Because if you see the trajectory that it set, it set the trajectory of data. It started with looking at patterns. So when I was thrown into Samsung, I was in charge of admin and showroom, and there was a box sitting there called microwaves. Nobody knew what to do with it. And I was looking at it and I told my manager, hey, if you give me a chance, I know what to do with it. I can help you sell this. And he said, yeah, go for it. So picked up from there. I called my friend and said, hey, can you think of a couple of recipes that you can do in microwaves? And she said, yeah, absolutely. I said, okay, come over every Saturday. I went to every agency there in the city, picked up all the customer database addresses, did postcards, put a database together, sent postcards, invited people to come over on Saturday for cooking shows, and we sold out. And literally, the customer database was born right there. And I don't even want to name the years, but it was in the 90s. And nobody ever knew about a relational database. And I sat there creating that on a spreadsheet, literally, and it really became the initial this one into the data journey that I started. And I did not know I was starting that journey until my manager came and didn't give me the commissions, but he told me that you really have a career in data analytics. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I prefer my commissions. But anyway, so went from there. I decided to pursue my education further after some more pivots, which we will talk about in the next section. But after that, I did my master's in IT. While doing the master's program in Australia, and after I finished that, it was 2001, perfect time to look for a job, right? I think many of us are feeling that crunch right now. And I felt it too, but I didn't care. I just went and worked. I got a job with a very small takeout place in a railway station. This was like one of the biggest railway stations and one of the mom and pop takeout corners. And what I saw there was they were creating this, chicken tikka rolls. And I never seen that before. This was again in the early 2000s, never seen that before. I thought that was unique. And I asked the owner, I said, can I actually help you guys sell this better? And he's like, absolutely, yeah. So then what I did was to put the train timings together. That's the next patterns in the traffic. And just completely learned about the train timings and everything, and created brochures, created t-shirts, created logos, created a brand for this little place, and really positioned each item. Like I just picked 2 items, positioned that for morning and evening commuter traffic. And that's really what was my patterns in traffic, in understanding what the morning commuter really looks for and what the evening commuter looks for. So those were the patterns I started learning, and that's how the branding company launched there. And I got a large order, and I couldn't trust my manufacturer. So I sold that company, paid a little bit of my tuition fee, and moved on. So that was the patterns in the traffic that I learned from. And then comes the real deal. So it's I started in the insurance industry. I started with an insurance company doing a lot of great things. When I first landed there, I didn't think I would even last more than 3 days. But it turned out that I did last for a few years, 19 years right now. But when I started, that's where I started with the work comp carrier, did a lot of legacy transformation, successful ones, and many reports that I launched for them, monthly reports in easy to find areas and in a frequency and a place where they can all access without going and hanging around with the IT team and filing tickets. So that was very successful. From there, I got taken from there and went to a software company doing vertical solutions. And I did launch 2 solutions as a solutions architect, one in the underwriting, one in the claims space. Started talking to a lot of claims managers, and there they talked about claims stories. And that was my third pattern in how Charlie was actually born. Is I started I started getting you kind of moved all the time back to the claim files. Every time you go talk to the claims manager saying, how do I build this analytics KPIs for you? And they would be like, oh, you have to go to the claims files. And so that kind of drove me curious. And I said, okay, I'm going to read these files, what it is. Spent 1 month literally every week reading hundreds of claim files, came out of that exercise and it said, damn, these are just claim stories are nothing but pieces of unstructured information about your loss, about your risk, about the exposures. And if you can find a way to uniformly put them in a data model and convert them into structured attributes that you can measure, there is so much of value in that common denominator, and you can do so much of analytics and so much of knowledge sharing just using that common denominator. So that's how Charlie was born. That's the 3 patterns that really strike this one to how Charlie actually was born. It was not just Charlie started on its own, but it started with these patterns. Pivots. So I talked about the going to hotel management. So what I didn't talk about at that time was the adversity. So I do come from a lower middle class family in India. My dad was unemployed. My sister was terminally ill, and it was a lot of medical expenses. I grew up with my grandpa and grandparents, and that was the best thing out of the adversity that happened is I grew up under his guidance, and he was a very successful person. First a cop, turned into a criminal attorney, and taught me a lot about analytics and cognitive behavior analytics, everything that goes into perceiving a lot of the investigatory practices and how these things morphed into what I incorporated into Charlie. I think you will see that. But because of that, I call this the two-plate meals attitude. When you don't know what your second meal is going to look like, when you don't really have any idea whether you're going to get that second meal, it actually forces you to do two things. One is take to drugs, or just have to find a way to find your second meal. And that adversity is what kind of drove me from Bollywood dance to find my next and next and next gig. And that helped really build that endurance. I'm not saying this is the way that everybody should find endurance, but if that's what life gives you, you just use that to build endurance. And this, instead of feeling sympathetic or pitiful for myself, I said, okay, I have to support my family. I need to do some things. I can't just sit in the hotel industry and doing this forever. What does this look like 10 years down the road? What does this look like 5 years down the road? And when I saw that, I said, okay, I have to keep going, keep learning new things that can advance my career and put food on the table, if definitely the second plate, if not the third plate even. So that went from Bollywood to AI. That's the journey of adversity at every corner. The second, I would say, when we started Charlie, when I came out of that software company, what happened there was that software company actually disinvested in all the analytics products that we were working on. So I had two options. One is to quit, is to leave, because I was getting laid off. The second was to become a full-time consultant of theirs. I had a 3.5-year-old who was not doing well even with my 30% travel, so that was not an option at all. So I said, okay, if I cannot do the work that I like, I will bring the work that I like to me. And that's how Charlie started off, as a complete remote based, this one as more a research project where I kind of understood what the claims managers were driving towards. Learning all those claims by myself gave me an idea of what I wanted to do with the platform. And those days, big data platform were huge. So I decided to kind of spend time and do the research and build a big data platform that can consume all different varieties of data, because I kind of knew what claims is dealing with, and what are the different sources of data that claims deals with. So it started off as that platform that could consume any different variety of claim files, all the way to then putting solutions on top. And that kind of pivot happened because we were working on that platform, worked with several early adopters, and really understood that people didn't know, in the insurance industry, didn't know really how to kind of build analytics products when you have a platform like that. So we had to do a plug and play solution on top for people to understand. And the first thing I did was to look for domain experts. And I literally, I'm not even kidding when I say this, I literally stalked people on LinkedIn and the domain people, and I brought the folks that I wanted them to be part of, the people who had very rich domain experience, but who also understood data and who saw the future with both these two. And that was AI. So that's what we brought in. We brought in our co-founders, and we created a fraud solution for the workers' compensation and life insurance industry. And while we were doing that, we actually got into we actually started working with a PNC carrier, property and casualty. This is non-life. They do mainly home and those ones. So we encountered them. We were doing a proof of concept, and they thought that using the data that we were pulling out of unstructured formats, we could actually do much better in prediction, in litigation prediction. And literally, that's how the next pivot happened, is for us to go from there to literally make that pivot and put life and work comp in the back burner and start in the PNC world, where we wanted to, at that time, own the insights. And our whole goal was to work with insurance carriers, get the claim files, take the unstructured data, and get the relevant information from there, convert that to insights, and convert that to an intelligence platform. So what started off as a data platform, really today, Charlie is all about an intelligence platform that has the complete intelligence built around the risk insights. And it didn't happen in a day. Like I said, it didn't happen because all because of me. It happened in those little curves and little things that you don't really know where it's coming from. But we kept our eyes and ears open, and we listened to people while we were building the platform, where we're building the solution on top of the platform, to understand that it's beyond solutions. Today, we have AI agents deployed on that, and we will talk about that also. So then came the pivot of what really birthed Charlie. It's not the data platform. It's not. I'm pretty sure every one of you here, given the opportunity, you can build even better things than what Charlie has been built on. This one is to understand what really matters to the claims world. If you're trying to change their workflows, if you're trying to change that, what was more important is to give them the intelligence and that's what really how they operate on a daily basis. If you look at it, the claim comes in, they're looking at all the things that go into supporting the claim, reading the stories, understanding the data from medical providers, from third party, and they're bringing all that. They're kind of reading all that, assimilating all that, and then making an objective decision of what should be paid on that claim. If we were to kind of take the pain away from being a subjective decision, to being a more objective decision, they needed intelligence, not just analytics. So that's the whole reason for the pivot again for Charlie, from the analytics claims and being just a claims analytics tool to being a more an intelligence insights layer. That kind of comes to the purpose. Why? So when I started kind of reading those stories, it was all about turning that subjective to objective, but to understand the flow on how these claims people handle, right from the intake of the claim all the way to the payment of the claim. What's the journey, and what does it include? What does it really rely on? What does it depend on? Everything had to be looked at, because if we are trying to enable the people with AI, you really have to understand their understand their workflow, understand what's on their table, because they don't have time for sitting there and telling you, yeah, this prediction is correct, this prediction is not correct because of this, because they are dealing with hundreds and hundreds of claims every day and coming at them, different data points coming at them. So they have to be quick to switch from one claim to another claim to another claim. So if they don't have time to tell you if this is right or wrong. Yes, it's not a do or die situation with this, but it is still, how do you test this? How do you get them to be objective? You have to provide the intelligence that has been attested and tested by the domain experts. So that's why the domain experts is very important. And that's why the first question, purpose, who is it for? it was meant for the adjusters. It was meant for the claims managers. And then comes the next question, what's in it for me? And everybody asks this question along this journey. I think when you're working, you ask even more, how am I making a difference? What is the bigger picture looking like? Where do I fit in this bigger picture? I think when you start your career, you probably might not ask these questions, but as you go along, in somewhere, like after a few years, you start asking these questions. So I just, what we did when we went from that claims challenge, in understanding, okay, how do we store the insights? How do these insights become part of Charlie? That's when we discovered natural language processing. And we said, oh, this is the way you can actually take these insights and convert them into structured attributes. But in order to do that, we have to really take a complete paragraph, like imagine a story written in a prose way, and you have to take it from there and convert them into attributes. So what do you use as the keywords? What do you use as your features? Or if you're doing feature engineering, you probably know this. Again, I don't want to throw acronyms there, but it's really literally features of the claim. And it's identifying those features from a domain expert's view and converting those features. And for converting those features, we had to understand and interpret. And for doing that, we had to build a taxonomy, build a dictionary to understand, because everybody documents their claims, their stories very differently. So that led to our claims language model. And for us to have 3 patents in this and to lead the industry with a whole different perspective on focusing on exposures, which are the features of the claim, and to go from features all the way back to analytics and solutions, and literally, enhancing their workflows. So what's in it for everyone? And this is our purpose of taking the intelligence, taking the domain knowledge, taking the insights, taking all the technology and the techniques that starting from machine learning to the NLP to everything else that is there. If you want the complete technical stack, really converting that knowledge into intelligence. The purpose, again, like behind this was, it's the intelligence that makes the end user really use the product and pay for the product. Literally, that's what it is. So I'm at the last slide. I promise I'm not going to bore you guys with too much. I ask this question at every step of Charlie's journey. How do I want to age in this world of AI that is coming at us every day? You're seeing new models. Every day you're seeing new things come up. So ask yourself this question. Everybody will have a different answer to this. I had my own, sorry about that. I had my own answer to this one, and I'm not going to give you the answer because I'm still kind of refining that at this time. But it is a question that you all want to. You'll find that the answers would lead you to the purpose, and that purpose will demand that you pivot, you take pivots, and that whole this one of finding the when do you pivot is go back to the patterns of what you have learned in terms of your career, in terms of your personal lives, and do not discount the personal life learnings, because that's where you will get your patterns, and then you will actually understand when to pivot, and it will lead you to the purpose, and that will lead you to answer this question: how do I want to age in this AI world? I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has, if you guys want to have any questions, take it away, Uvika and Padmini.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry.
There's a question, Evan.
Should I go ahead and just
Yeah.
ask? Yeah. That was really good. That was very enlightening. But Sri, how do you handle some claims are people file fraudulent claims. So how would the agents know if something is fraudulent, especially for PNC, right? So it, do you have a special agent for that, or do you have thresholds or metrics, or how do you do that?
Insurance is a very difficult, and that's why a very apt AI use case, because it's not black and white. There is no black and white saying this is fraud, this is not fraud. Until you take them to court and you actually convict them, nothing can be considered as fraudulent. Everything at that point is still suspected fraud. And that's why the patterns become very important. Patterns of behaviors, patterns of behaviors of people, like, for example, the treatments, the diagnosis, the treatments, how the accident happened. It's different for a home loss versus very different for an auto accident versus very different for if you're in a company. So here's the reason why it's complicated, because insurance is one vertical that pretty much touches every horizontal. So it has the most horizontal impact. And think about schools, sexual abuse in schools, all the way to industry accidents, to to some director saying something negative on social media and getting sued for that, to all the way to your car accidents, to home hurricane losses. And so if you think about all these things, they all have their own nuances of how you spot suspicious behaviors. And that's really what AI can get to. You as a human, like, because it's a regulated industry, you cannot really automate at this point. You cannot really automate those indicators. You can just provide those indicators to the people in the workflows and let them make a human judgment as to, do I want to pursue the investigation based on these indicators? And that's really what Charlie does. We provide those indicators.
Right, and the reason I asked Sri is because banks are using AI to detect financial fraud. So they can look at a transaction and say, oh, this is potential fraud. But that's just based on an amount.
Exactly.
And it's hard to
So
do that in insurance. I can't
it's
look at,
very hard. It's very hard to do that in insurance. And only reason is because every state has their own statute of limitations. And every statute of limitations has certain this one. So I'll tell you, for example, there is I think there is a 20-year statute of limitation for filing sexual abuse cases. So 20 years down the line, and we've just actually come out of, doing this for a company. It's as sad as you can imagine. We are reading these claim files. It's nothing happy about it. Now, the immediate reaction of anybody looking at this data is, oh, this is sad, let's just pay it off. But, in the claims world, it's all about data. When you look at these kind of cases, when a person comes back 20 years after, because suddenly somebody else has opened up, you will have a series of cases where people come and file those cases. How do you know if the person is lying or not? And you don't, but still there is a statute that allows you to file the cases 20 years down the road. So what can you do in this? You can look at the facts. You can look at some of what we call as the facts of loss. And AI does a tremendously good job in identifying some patterns, in identifying these behavioral patterns. And that's what we focus on, is pointing out these behavioral patterns that really go into understanding every word of the interview that has happened, every word of the investigation that has happened, in questioning, okay, how did you fall? What happened? What I'm not going to go into the details of the abuse case, but let's take a fall, for example. Somebody goes into the supermarket, falls on the side of the parking lot, and file a claim, slip and fall. Now, how do you know? Like, maybe there is a surveillance in the parking lot. But how do you know if the person fell And did they actually fall because, they have other things going on? Or
Right.
did they actually fall because they knew there was a surveillance camera there? If you look at the surveillance camera there and you look at the fall, you're going to say, yeah, the person fell. I saw it. But unless and until you match all the five senses, what we call the who, where, what, why, and how. That's the five W's and a H of the investigation process. And each of this has data patterns, and that's really what Charlie captures.
Wow, this is fascinating, guys. This is like, Sri, do you see more denials in health, denial of claim in health than PNC?
We don't do health. We do mainly PNC. In PNC, no, I don't see denials. Actually, that's a very on the PNC side, it's a it's a misconception a lot of folks have. So I'll give you the rough statistics. Now, this again depends on state by state, um, line of business by line of business. It's different. Overall, less than 5% of claims go into litigation. Less than 10% of claims are fraudulent. So you have the 90% of claims that are actually good claims. And when I say good claims, it's because that's the reason why. Sorry, my fire alarm is like beeping all of a sudden. So I'm sorry about that. I think it sees me as a threat.
Yeah, we can't hear it.
Okay, it's probably seeing me as a threat right now. But anyway, so it's the 90%, that the industry is fighting the defenses for the 10%, because it's the 10% that cost more than 60% of their costs, of their payouts, actually. So it's because of that 10% costing the most. Insurance company neglects I won't say neglect, I mean, neglects probably is a bad word, but they don't focus so much on the 90%. They focus more on finding fraud, on fighting an attorney getting involved. But you see cases on both sides. I the whole purpose of creating Charlie was, hey, focus on the 90%. If I can give you the intelligence to get to that 10% and do your investigation, because that's not something that AI can do. AI cannot replace, at this point, AI cannot replace a true investigation, because it's a lot of, you will see, I mean, I'm not probably explaining this clearly, but if you take two files, I will give you two files, and I will not tell you which one is fraudulent in that, or which one made it to the court
The
where
court.
the people were convicted. And okay, I'll probably give you a name. When we started this exercise, I told you life and work comp is where we started. Workers' compensation, we worked with a district attorney in Southern California. And this was 16 different insurance companies, 7 different medical providers, and $120 million insurance fraud scheme. This was a very huge fraud scheme. And if you look at the basics, right? I mean, we had massive amounts of data. Like, you can just think, this is not just claims data coming from your system of record file, but it is also explanation of benefit forms, what we call as the DWC first report of injury forms. They're all forms, like PDFs and forms and things like that. And along with, claim files where the investigation notes are captured and claims notes, and then you have the diagnosis, you have the medical reports coming from the medical providers. So we consumed all of that. And, and we built what is called an injury pattern analysis. And that was presented to the grand jury. And one of us were called, because they wanted to understand the OCR, whether the OCR replaces a we with a you.
Yeah.
This was the question that was asked, and that's the reason why we were called to the court, and we said, no, we don't replace any of that. So that's why, technology is great, but sometimes if you are too perfect, if you use too much of technology, you will end up in court and you will not be able to answer that question. So in this case, we did not change any of the things that we were extracting from these files. And what was fascinating to see was there was a pattern in the forms where majority of those forms, some of the data elements were typed, and most of the ones that were handwritten were these diagnoses and the injuries. And the injuries were similar, like dot similar. It was very similar. So you have to arrive at patterns. And if you're doing machine learning, you guys all know this better than I do, but machine learning will throw, like when we threw this into the machine learning, it gave us more than 10,000, 15,000 patterns. That's not useful. I'm not going to take all those patterns and give it to an attorney so he can fight the case.
Right.
They indicted all the 7. Now, what is important to understand, which one of those 10,000 patterns, maybe 5, 6, 7 patterns that are important. So that's where, your domain knowledge comes in, all the other techniques that you can use to narrow down the patterns that you can actually effectively give the injury patterns that mattered, and, so that the case can be fought. And in this, the plaintiff attorney also could not point out anything about Charlie, and they said, yeah, fine. So it's a tough, this one, where if I gave you 2 files, exactly the same diagnosis, exactly the same treatments, exactly the same injuries, exactly the same losses, and one will settle for $10,000, the other one will go for $1 million. You cannot tell me why.
Wow, fascinating. I think we have another question from Rupa. Rupa, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, apologies, I cannot come off camera, but Sri, amazing story, and admire your resiliency throughout the journey and the process and where you come. I was just curious to know as to what is the success rate in terms of the accuracy and prediction that Charlie gives that outcome with.
So today we do 3 kinds of predictions. We do attorney predictions, we do litigation predictions, and we do severity predictions. Severity is literally a different name for predicting reserves or predicting the outcomes of the claims. So if you feed me the claim that I was just talking to you about, 2 claims, I feed it into Charlie. Severity predictions will be, hey, this claim might settle in $10 to $25,000. This one might be $500,000 plus. So that's severity predictions. We predict in bins. And these are the 3 predictions we do. Severity predictions, given some lines of business, we have over 90% accuracy in the auto side, but in the general liability side, that drops to about 75 to 80%. So average anywhere between 75 to 85 is what we have found. And the reasons for that accuracy is, which is good in the industry standards. It's good. I always, when customers question me about the accuracy, I said, you're not driving a plane. It's, you don't need to know accurately what this will settle. What is most important behind those predictions is not the accuracy, but it's the explanations. It's the explanation, it's the context of why did you predict 10,000 on this? Why is Charlie saying this will be $10 to $25,000 versus this one that says $500,000? And that's feature engineering. You have to go back to the features, the insights that we have developed in the platform, because if I gave those 2 files to a domain expert who has like 30 years of experience, they will tell you right away, oh my God, yeah, just pay attention to this file. This file is going to blow up. Why? Because of these things. We are mimicking the exact same thing. It's the explanations that I would say that supplement the accuracy.
Amazing. And also it's the amount of time it takes away from the humans to really do these predictions or review these files and claims. That must be an interesting number as well.
So it's fascinating because today a lot of the experts are leaving the industry. Many have left during time. Many have left and retired, and they're finding it difficult because it's such a thankless job. A claims adjuster or claims examiner or claims handler is a very, very thankless job. They're not paid that much. and you have so much of burden. Literally, this is a case I will tell you. Post-COVID, we found 33% more attorney getting involved in the first 30 days of the claim. In the first 30 days of the claim. And this was 33% more just in 2 years. And why that is? Because people became remote. They lost a lot of their good intake people. And a lot of them were brought into the job without any training. And the first call that they make to the company that takes the what we call as the first notice of loss, the plaintiff attorney, if they are making the claim, they know what, based on how you respond to taking that claim, they know whether you know the subject, whether you know the jurisdiction, whether you know the statutes of limitations, whether you know the line of business you're dealing with. And literally, they will start screaming at you. Literally, these are in the claim notes where they are harassed and they're mentally, it's like you cannot keep your calm. It's just there's no way. When I was reading these files, this is the big takeaway for me was, how the hell do you keep your calm? How the hell do you function as humans when day in and day out, all you're getting is the bad incidents? Because literally claims are what something that's gone wrong. And you just cannot understand, like, a worker falls from the ladder, dies. You're reading literally the files that are this sad. And it's very hard for you to keep your ground. That's where I think AI really helps in putting that perspective, bringing those insights, and telling these novice people, let the person scream. Here on this one, I have an AI agent that will come and tell you, as soon as I hear some words there, I can tell you what questions to ask of this person. So you give that confidence to the front level person to be able to morph your questions based on what the other person is telling you. And that's literally their on-site training. And it's hard. It's a very hard job. And I think there's a lot of things that AI can do and bring to this plate. We have not even scratched the surface at this time. I would say literally less than 1% at this time.
Amazing, amazing.
So, Shri, I have a question for you. Actually, two. One is a fun one. Why the name Charlie? And then you can answer that second if you want. The other is training data. So to train your models, you have all this training data, but do you see synthetic data also playing a role in training your models? Because is that something that you cannot use?
I don't prefer to use synthetic data because, like I said, when we're dealing with a regulated industry, there are a few things that you need to do to protect yourselves. Like I wanted to protect our company because I know what happens I'll give you a simple example. Urbanization score. I'm not going to name companies here, and because it's not, you just have to learn from these episodes, I would say, which is very scary because it literally can cost you your company. This startup company that was providing what is called an urbanization score. It sounds very technically like fantastic. I'm sure the company got funded based on that. But the problem with that is that it's called profiling. And literally what happened was the company that was using, the insurance company that was using, again, I'm not going to name it. Right now, they are in a class action lawsuit. So what they did was property, these are like homeowners in a specific zip. One of them filed this lawsuit. Why? Because she did a research for 2 years and proved that the urbanization score is actually contributing to the claims people in this company asking for more paperwork because they come from that specific location. And that's so how AI is used. I'm pretty sure when they came up with the urbanization score, it was a totally different, purpose. But what it was used for was completely, I would say you have to be responsible in using AI not just in developing AI, but how it's used. You don't tend to control a lot of those things because somebody else, you sell it, you don't know how they're going to use it. So when we develop our insights, it has to be from the real claims. It has to understand it like a real claim. It has to be the real claims. And that's why right from the beginning, I wrote it into the contract saying that belongs to me.
Yeah, I would imagine, because I also feel like training data over time, it can, I mean, not training, synthetic data can can degrade over time if you use it in the model. And
it can be very problematic because they are coming up with AI regulations, and one of the things they're asking for is show me the models. Show me the models that gave this data. So if you now say that I use synthetic data, you're going to be in court.
Yeah.
You're going to be. So that's why this industry is very, I would say you have to be very careful in how you sell your product to them, what they use it for, the use cases, the AI agents that you deploy, what it's doing, what is it replacing and what is it doing? Is it a part where it's actually deciding the liability? Because that's a no. I don't want to determine who is liable in this. That is for you to determine. I will tell you what the facts of loss are. This person struck, he came and T-boned me, or he struck me from the back. I can give you all those, what we call as facts of loss. The person fell from the ladder. Were they having other, things? Did they consume alcohol? Did they have other issues? Did they know about it? I'm not going to say who's liable. Like, was this person, taking medications? Did the company that employed him knew about it and still put him on the ladder? That's for the person to understand and make a judgment, make a decision of who is liable in this. Although machine learning can do it, although you have, techniques now with generative AI that can actually do it, it's a very dangerous place to be in, especially because insurance is not like a banking transaction. It's not like a credit card transaction where I just say, oh, you actually did it from that location. So, you usually actually use your credit card from these locations. Today, you used it from this location. I'm going to actually give you an alert. It doesn't work that way. Guess what? If you do that, you're going to get sued because it is all about, um, it's a jury is very sympathetic to policyholders. They don't really like insurance companies. So insurance companies try not to be in trial. Most of the time they will settle it, but it's a big growing problem where I think social inflation is a huge problem right now. And because of that, you want to position your AI for just sticking to the facts.
So clever.
and
And why
Charlie,
Charlie?
Being safe.
I don't know. I mean, our product was named Charlie. One of the advisors, said, hey, it should be we wanted to do a chat bot at that time. So they said, how about Hi Charlie? And there was another company, a friend of mine that said, that had a company named Hi Marley. So I said, this is like so close to them. I'm not going to do it. But we named our product Charlie. And when we wrote it on the board, I said, no, I think it should sound feminine. So we
so
just
that's why the two.
removed IE and changed EE. And literally that's how the product name was there. And for a long time, we had Infinlytics as the company name and Charlie as the product name. And at some point, our customers would have a difficult time to pronounce Infinlytics. And we said we have to rebrand ourselves. And we were asking around everybody, what should we rebrand it to? And we went to a prospect finally, and the prospect said, which company? The one that has Charlie product? And we're like, okay, done. It was a no-brainer. So we just rebranded it to Charlee.ai. And that's the time we actually completed 3.5 years of training Charlie language model and completing the insights database and literally coming out to the mainstream to start selling it to the mainstream. That was early 2022. So we rebranded to Charlee.ai because we understood that we were doing AI only at that time.
It's very fascinating. I have a
And
question
don't
as
look
well.
at the meaning of Charlie. I think after we all named it, we loved the name so much that we kept it. But somebody came back with, "Hey, did you look up the Google with Charlie?" And I'm like, "No." And so we looked up and we were like, "Oh no."
Oh no, now you're making me go Google.
Yeah, I know. I know
Yeah.
everybody's going to. But yeah, we kept the name because we loved it. Everybody loves the name.
Okay. Tazeen, you have a question as well, right? Do you want to just speak up and ask your question?
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. It was a really fascinating journey. So I don't have almost no idea about agentic AI. So I'm just curious to know, like when you train the model for this type of system, a large data intensive system. So I believe it is very uh, computational intensive. That means it takes a lot of time to train the model. So what is the challenges associated with that, and what architectures or like cloud-based systems are there to accelerate it, and how to reduce the latency of the system?
So I think out of necessity and out of being poor as a startup, we had not much of a choice. And at that time, there was no generative AI, there was no chat GPT, or there was no GPT or any of these models around. So we built our own claims language model because there was nothing that understood claims. Even today, if you look at it, GPT and all these models make mistakes in understanding insurance and understanding claims language. They understand English very well, but they don't understand claims. So we had no choice at that time. So we started with our own language model. And after that, we have developed our own RAG-based systems. And I'm not a very technical person to that extent. My CTO is, but I do know that we had to optimize this for the use cases that really we wanted to pursue. So it's all about, you don't have to train the model like for the entire this one. What does it take to train? What does it take to predict litigation? What does it take to predict this? What does it actually take to give these scores and also give a context of all the features that go with that prediction? We stuck to the use case and we kind of continue to enhance based on the use cases we saw successful. And literally, that's how even the AI agents have rolled out, where now we know that, okay, if there is a document that we get, how do we take that document? What are we processing out of the document? How do we generate an alert? Where does this go next? What does it automatically do once it sees certain things in the documents? So that's how we kind of logically went from one to the other based on how the customers are using it and where we would actually get the maximum benefits. We are on all the three clouds. Sorry. We are on all the three clouds at this time. Excuse me.
Take your time, please.
Yeah, get some water.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been talking since morning today. So I think my voice is like, and excuse me, I'm fasting too today. So maybe my energy is like not that very high.
Oh, sorry.
So it's we're on all the three clouds at this time. And literally the efficiency that we have built is by optimizing each of these clouds, because there came a point where we could have been bankrupted because of the cloud usage.
Yeah.
If we didn't pay attention to the architecture, if we didn't pay attention to some things there, we can talk about that. I think my CTO would be a better person to walk us through uh, some of those very critical elements that people miss when doing AI, when deploying it on clouds, and now when you're taking an LLM and wanting to train for a specific use case for a specific domain, and also build small language models, right? So entire journey, all of these things require a very, very tight architecture. And for us to really understand the use cases, the clouds that you're dealing with, the SOC 2 compliance that is involved in it, the privacy, the PII, the HIPAA, all of those things too, to be considered. Good
Thank you.
question, though.
Amazing.
Superb. I know we are almost up on time, Sri. We don't want to keep you longer, but I just had one question. As you mentioned that insurance is a very complex industry, I'm assuming you probably had some challenges. So how did you convince some of your early customers to believe in your vision?
So this is the way I've always approached my career too, is if you want something, you have to give something. And you always, when you go with the product and you tell them, hey, I want your data for training, nobody's going to give you. Nobody's going to give you. So I went with the thing saying, hey, I have analytics. I can actually take your file and help you do this. This is the basic solution I have. Now they will give you the data. You know, so it's the same thing with your career too. You go and just say, I want to learn AI. That sounds fantastic, but nobody has time to teach you. Will be the answer that you will get. But if you say, hey, I have learned NLP, I can help you on this, and you go with this one of what can you do for them, whoever it is, whether it's your customer, whether it's your partner, whether it is your investor, whether it is your colleague, your peer, your mentor, your mentee, everybody is looking for something, and not for a bad purpose. If they come to you for a bad purpose, you will probably sense it. But I'm just saying, nobody is going to come to you and say, hey, I want to money launder, or I want to commit fraud. Can you tell me how to do it? That's different, right? But nobody is going with that bad intentions. Majority, like I said, 90% of claims are good claims. So I believe that 90% of people have good intentions. I would say just show that intention first before you demand that from the others.
Superb. Thank you. You're truly a rock star.
No, I'm not. It's not about being, it's about just grabbing the opportunities. And I think that's the key is if you look at going from hotel management to, AI, it's just that curiosity, and never really thought for a second, what am I going to do if I don't have a job? What am I going to do? How am I going to feed? I'm like, hey, you're talking to a person who didn't know where the second meal was going to come from, and you can't scare me with those things anymore. It doesn't scare me anymore. I think the bigger this one is, they can take away your job, they can take away your title, they can take away your salary. What they cannot take away from you is the knowledge that you build. And that, I think, is the key, is keep learning everything, every opportunity. If I went from hotel, like working in the hotel, my grandpa died at that time, and I think I was in trauma. I didn't know that I was in trauma, really. And I could not be in that place anymore, because he always believed in me. He always thought that I would do more, and I never believed in myself. So I wanted to get out of that place, and then at this opportunity, at Samsung came into this one. Never did I think, what am I going to do there? How much salary am I going to get? When I went for the interview, the person said, oh, is this an admin job? I'm like, okay, great. Can you give me the showroom too? I'd love to manage the showroom too. And he's like, I'm not going to give you any more money. I'm like, that's fine. Pay me what you want. And because I wanted to learn, because I was coming from a hotel industry, going into a new one, and I wanted to check out where my interests lie. Will I like the showroom sales? Will I like the admin? Will I like the back office? I didn't know. So it was, when I don't know and I want to learn, there is no price for it.
Love it.
Powerful, really powerful. Thank you, Sri. It's been truly inspiring. I'm sure everyone will agree. And thank you, everyone, for being here, for listening to this amazing story that Sri had to share. Please be on the lookout for more events. Uvika and I will be posting, and I'm sure you saw the upcoming events that we posted. So very cool stuff coming up in June as well. So please stay tuned and please keep joining and keep learning.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Sri.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Sri.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everything. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.